In the last 4 years, more than 5,000 cops have been arrested and charged with various crimes. More concerning is that over 3,000 of them remain employed by the police service. It's part of what was revealed by the police minister who was responding to questions in Parliament. I'm joined by independent crime and policing researcher David Bruce. David, good evening. Thanks for your time. So what do you make of the police minister's answer to that question in the National Assembly?
Well, it raises various issues. The one is, of course, it raises a question about the types of recruitment standards that are being applied by the SAPS. And it suggests that questions to do with the integrity of those who are being recruited into the SAPS are not necessarily being examined with sufficient rigor during the recruitment process. But it also raises a whole lot of other questions. Of course, we know that various members of the SAPS at quite a senior level have been implicated in allegations of corruption. And so, it raises a question about the broad environment in the SAPS and the standards that are set by SAPS leadership. So obviously it's an undesirable situation where so many members of the SAPS are implicated in crimes.
When we look at the processes of accountability, we cannot talk about that in reference to the police without looking at the role of Ipid and what it's supposed to be playing.
Yeah, well, that's right. And so one of the processes that has been unfolding recently has been in relation to the Ipid bill. So there's an amendment to the Ipid Act that is currently before Parliament, but which is on the point of being finalised. But there's a question about what kind of impact that might have, and whether that will contribute to have any significant impact on this kind of situation. Many of the cases that were highlighted in this story that was published today about, or in the reply by the minister, would not be cases that are actually investigated by Ipid anyway.
So ultimately, is it a problem with the police's own disciplinary mechanisms, internal disciplinary structures?
Yeah, I would certainly say that, and I mean that's the evidence from recent years is that there's been quite a substantial decline in the effectiveness of the disciplinary system. That there's been a dramatic drop in disciplinary cases that have been finalized. And so, for instance, statistics released last week by the SAPS in Parliament also indicated that basically for every disciplinary case that's actually completed, only 1 in 6 cases results in an actual disciplinary penalty. So, roughly a third of cases result in other types of progressive discipline, warnings and so on. And then, roughly 50% of cases don't actually result in any kind of conviction against the member charged.
Let's talk about then, David, how we change this, because it's certainly not good, the fact that these officers, despite the serious charges that they're facing or the cases against them, they still remain in the employ of the SAPS, earning taxpayer money.
Yeah, well, certainly, and it's the one thing that raises a question, as you indicated, is about the disciplinary system. So, for instance, it's now 3 years ago that the Secretariat on Police circulated a draft bill on amendments to the Police Act, which would have provided for implementation of a dedicated disciplinary unit. So currently, discipline is dealt with on quite a kind of ad hoc basis within the SAPS, and it would have, if the bill had been formalized into law, it would have required that the SAPS have almost like a professional, full-time disciplinary unit, which would involve people with experience of dealing with disciplinary cases, dealing with these issues. But nothing has happened with that bill in the intervening period. And so, the one thing it highlights is that there's a obvious kind of lack of urgency in attending to these issues. Those proposals could, of course, also have been implemented without actually passing the bill. And so, it suggests that SAPS management isn't addressing the issue with enough seriousness.
But how do we then expect these very individuals to be the ones that enforce the law?
Yeah, well, that's the question. And so, obviously what we want is a police system where, when we see someone who is a police officer, we take it for granted that they are someone who we can trust, someone who, our default is to respect them. But with this kind of information, obviously, and we know that there are members serving in the SAPS who are dedicated and disciplined and law-abiding members of the SAPS. But, with this kind of information in the public domain, there's obviously, with every encounter that we have with the members of the SAPS, it raises a question for us about, what kind of personnel we interacting with.
All right. We'll leave it there for today. David Bruce, thank you so much for your time.